Here we go. It's the mid-season AFC report card grades. Is it mid-season? Is it not? Nobody really knows. 18 weeks, 17 games. Let's go ahead and jump in to the mid-season report cards. If we're the first to do it, let it be. And everybody click, share, subscribe to our channel to see the NFC next week. But let's start off with the AFC, and let's talk about no other team than my Buffalo Bills. My grade for them, I'll go ahead and give it to you. It's going to be an A-, okay? They've done a few things right with getting Amari Cooper in. Even though he was non-existent on Sunday, this past Sunday, it still doesn't matter. It's a win in my book because he is the number one guy. But Keon Coleman is showing up. The defense looks way better than I thought it would. Von Miller's making an impact as well as the other front. Russo is just, he had that goal line stand. It was a great defensive performance this last Sunday and all the way throughout the year. It's been superb. It's 6-2 right now. Josh Allen threw his first interception this past Sunday. That's insane. Forgot about that. Didn't know he had thrown any picks until this past Sunday. But it happens to the best of them. Josh Allen has been known to throw a lot of picks. And for him to go 8 weeks without throwing one, that's pretty good. Pretty good. The run game's going great. James Cook looks good. The reason they don't get an A+ for me and only an A- is really just because of the two losses that they had. Texans and the Ravens are the two losses. The Texans, they really should have beaten that game. It was a pretty close game. They lost 23-20. I think that's one of the games that they really needed to come out with. But as far as the AFC East goes, I think that the Bills are kind of the walking dogs in this division.
Oh, yeah. Not even close. They're running away with it, so they're in a good spot. I'll go to another team in that division. I'll talk about the New York Jets. There's no grade you could give the Jets other than F. We talked about the Jets in a video already this episode. If it's up, I'll link it right there when it's ready. Go watch it. I will expand on these thoughts. But basically, when you hand your entire franchise over to a 40-year-old quarterback, whether he was coming off an Achilles or not, and then you fire the one good thing the organization had going, which was a coach that gave your defense and your team an identity, it implodes. You lose that identity. It was going bad beforehand. It's going worse now. The Jets are and will always be the Jets. This was a team that wanted to compete for a Super Bowl. I didn't think they would, but that's what they said. Their aspirations were Super Bowl, playoffs. They're going to be lucky to win 5 games. If you hope for the Super Bowl and you win 5 games, there's no way you can grade it anything other than an absolute failure. It's an F.
I completely agree. Let's move on to the next team in this division, the Miami Dolphins. I will be giving them a C-, mainly C for the word concussion. And I'm going to give them a C-. I know it's not really fair to judge them on injury, but...
I think you're being generous.
Yeah, well, C- is what they're getting from me just because of the injury. You can't really give them credit for having the backup quarterback in. It's been a rough ride for the Dolphins. They got Tua back. They do look, re-energized. They did look better this past Sunday. But overall, they still needed to pull out this win to really give them any shot to be competitive in this division. Again, like I said about the Bills, they're the walking dogs. The Dolphins have a long way to go from what I thought they would be preseason with this offensive powerhouse that they have with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Raheem Mostert, A-Chain. Like, you'd think that this team should be scoring points left and right all the way up and down the field, and yet they struggle to get over 20 points in any given game. Only twice it's happened. Week one against the Jags, and this past week, 27 points against the Cardinals. So it seems that when Tua's in, they can score over 20 points, but still not enough to win football games. It's unfortunate for the Dolphins. They get a C- from me.
Wow, you're more generous than me. I would go lower. We'll see. We'll see what they can make out of the season. Yeah. The Kansas City Chiefs, my team, was tempted to not give them the perfect grade, but when you're 7-0 after losing all your receivers, what do? Would you give them something else?
No, I just don't like to hear it.
Okay.
Look, this isn't a rebuttal against you. It's just I just don't like hearing it. I know what the grade should be.
Okay, I was wondering. A+, not just because they're 7-0, because they're 7-0 when they lost Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Isaiah Pacheco. Lost them
everybody.
All, and they're undefeated for the 3rd time, and I think in franchise history. Yeah, they made a trade. They brought in DeAndre Hopkins. They just traded for Uche from the Patriots to add some more help on the edge. Omenihu should get healthy and come back. They're just rolling. Only thing that worries me as a Chiefs fan, getting hot early in the year. Usually teams that win the Super Bowl get hot later. Are they hitting their peak too soon? I doubt it because they got Mahomes. Yeah, it's not pretty, but the defense is the best in football. The offense isn't as bad as people make you believe. They move the ball. They don't get on third down a lot. They've just had trouble in the red zone. Kareem Hunt and DeAndre Hopkins will help with that. They're the best team in football. A+, the season's going better than could be expected given all the injuries.
I like it. I don't hate it. I never can hate on Patrick Mahomes. Even though I don't like it emotionally, I still know that they are an A+ team for everything they've overcome this season. Well, let's move on to another team in the AFC West and talk about the Denver Broncos. Wow. I can't even begin to describe how much I want to and am giving this team an A. What Bo Nix and Sean Payton have done at the Broncos is nothing short of remarkable. It is a terrific offense, and it's really just it keeps getting better every single week. The defense is great. They have a couple of great quality wins. One against the Bucs when they only let the Bucs score 7 points. Did you know that happened?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
that's crazy. One of the highest scoring Tampa Bay is one of the highest scoring offenses in the entire NFL. They held them to 7 points.
Tell that to my bookie.
It's just an overall impressive performance from a team that everybody thought would not be nearly as good as what they are currently. The Denver Broncos they're, aside from the Chiefs, they're the second team in this division, I believe. 5-3 on the year. And I think they could easily get a wild card slot. I know I'm not really going to pitch it to you on much, but do you agree? Do you think they could get a wild card slot?
I completely agree. As a matter of fact, before the season, when I was making my playoff predictions, I had them as the 7th seed, and I just fought against it and took it. I thought they were going to be in the hunt for that final wild card spot just because I still believed in Sean Payton. They're still exceeding what I thought. Their defense is incredible. They've got one of the best defenses in the league. Bo Nix is okay. He's Sean Payton's managing him, and that's what he needs to do. This is just a great coaching job by Sean Payton. Shows you he's still got it. The Broncos are a team nobody wants to face because that defense, and they're still taking that Russell Wilson contract on, so it's impressive. I'll take on another team. Last team we'll talk about in the AFC West, the Los Angeles Chargers, bringing in new coach Jim Harbaugh from Michigan, and I'm going to give the Chargers a B+ because I think this is probably what you expect. This is what you want. You're 4-3. You're winning games. You might sneak into the playoffs. You might not, but you're clearly building something. You're starting to build an identity. With the lack of weapons this team has, I mean, they really have no weapons. The fact that they've won 4 games is impressive. They put up 132 points this year, but they've only allowed 91 points. I mean, that's really well done. They're able to control the game. They do what they need to do. That's what a good coach does. He looks at the roster. He says, what can I do with these guys? And he executes. I don't have a lot to elaborate on them. I just think they're doing what every Harbaugh fan, what every Chargers fan hoped they would do. This is what we expected to see. This is what we're seeing. The Chargers are going to get better year by year. It's a B+.
Baltimore Ravens. I had them at an A-, and then I just looked at their schedule, and I'm dropping them down to a B+. Look, this offense, we know it's rolling, right? Like, we know that Lamar, Derrick Henry, they're just playing lights out great football. But the problem is the defense, man. I don't think enough people are talking about this. Like, they say that the Baltimore Ravens defense is good. They've only been really good against one team this year, and it's my Bills. They only allowed 10 points to the Bills. But listen, they lost against the Browns last week, which is enough to drop you to like a C ranking in my book. But they let them score, 29 points on them. They let the Bucs score 31. The Commanders score 23, 38 from the Bengals. Like, this is the problem. The defense has given up way too many points, and that's what's going to drop them to a B+ for me. The offense seems to be rocking and rolling, but this defense has to step up, man, if they want any shot at overcoming the AFC North here, the AFC North, and beating out a team like, Pittsburgh, who is on that cusp of, especially with Russell Wilson in the game now, on the cusp of possibly winning that division and taking away from the Ravens.
Speaking of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'll just give them an A because they're exceeding expectations. I thought they would be better than last year. To be honest, I thought Justin Fields would be the quarterback. When he started the season, I was like, there's no way they go back to Russ. I'll credit Mike Tomlin. Russ does add a dynamic that Justin Fields did not, and I didn't expect it. Even after tonight where they beat the Giants, Russell Wilson pushes the ball downfield. He throws the 50-50 ball to Pickens. Pickens was a non-factor in the offense with Fields. Well, now he's brought back in. It's actually crazy how much Russell Wilson's presence and just willingness to push the ball downfield elevates this team. We know the defense is great. That's really all I've got to say. Mike Tomlin always does a good job. He always gets them over 500. Right now, they're leading the AFC North at 6-2.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I said they were on the cusp. I forgot about the win tonight. That sent
puts them over.
Yep, and so now they are leading the AFC North. Crazy, man. Isn't that just insane? Would you ever think that the Ravens would be ever falling behind the Steelers when it came preseason this year?
I did not. I thought the Steelers would sneak into the playoffs like they always do. I did not think they would be kind of on cruise control right now. I still don't think they're an elite team. Like, I don't think they're going to, make a lot of noise in the playoffs. But obviously, football, it's one elimination games. You never know what can happen. Steelers get an A.
Let's talk about the Houston Texans over in the AFC South, a team that is unfortunately plagued by a lot of injuries. The AFC in general, they have a lot of injuries this year, but the Texans, man, they just seem to just be losing one by one when it comes to receiver. Diggs is out, Collins is out. It's a rough ride for them. Joe Mixon was out for a while. It's clear that when Joe Mixon is in this offense, the team does so much better. And even with all the injuries plaguing them, they did happen to beat the Colts this past Sunday with a tired Anthony Richardson. So in my grading scale, the Texans are going to get a B- from me. I do think that this team has a really good shot at pulling out the win in the AFC South, really just because all their other opponents are god-awful. Like, every team in this division except for the Texans, they're just bad. Now, if Joe Flacco plays with the Colts, they are a little bit better, but ultimately the Texans should be just running away with this division, and yet they are still struggling just a little bit. I need them to shape up a little bit more. I know they're 6-2, and you say, Ryan, that's a great record. I get it, but some of these wins have been really sloppy.
Yeah, and their offensive line is genuinely atrocious. I mean, it's bad.
Yes.
It's just, you can't win a championship like that. They've got issues. They overcome it because of their defense and their quarterback, but they've definitely got issues. The Colts, let's stay in that division. We talked about them a little, talked about Anthony Richardson. I'll link that video here. I'm going to give them a C. You could argue for them to get better or worse. Ultimately, I'm giving them a C simply because I like Shane Steichen. We've seen what Shane Steichen can do with quarterbacks. When he can't do anything with Anthony Richardson, the guy's a bust. The fact that they're 4-4 is impressive. Me and you say every week when we do our picks, we're like, if Joe Flacco's playing, I like the Colts more. If he's not, I like the other team. If Joe Flacco becomes the starter going forward, like he should, if they'll allow it and Shane Steichen can put Flacco in, I don't know if they can win the division because the Texans already have the 2 games on them. They beat them twice, but they can maybe make the playoffs. We know Shane Steichen's a really good coach. The Colts have weapons. They have talented receivers. They have talented players on defense. They're well coached. They're in every game they play almost. They just need reliable and consistent quarterback play. The fact that they're still keeping their head above water, staying at 500 with the Anthony Richardson disaster gets them a C.
Well, a team that I am actually pretty excited to talk about because of how much disdain I have for this team. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Wow, 2 wins. If I told you preseason that the Jags would have 2 wins by week 8, would you think I was crazy, or would this be status quo?
I would think you were absolutely freaking insane.
I would agree with you. So for me, this team gets the dreaded F ranking. Everything about this team is awful. It's atrocious. It's an abject disaster in Jacksonville, and I do not know why they haven't done anything to fix the problem. Like, as far as trades go, as far as coaching goes,
Ryan, because they gave the problem $55 million.
That is true. That is absolutely true. But you know what I'm saying, though? Like, they still haven't made any small moves to try to help anything. Like, even these other teams are making little tiny adjustments to try to get better. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they're just saying, hey, they're doing the Anthony Richardson tap out. We're done. There's no shot for us winning any. Like, if this team gets more than 5 wins, I will be completely shocked. Everything about this team is bad. Even when they have good performances, like, it can get your hopes up for a minute, and then you're like, oh, right, I forgot. It's still Jacksonville. It's still Trevor Lawrence. It's still Doug Peterson. Nothing about this team gets me excited except for Brian Thomas Jr. He is the only silver lining in this entire organization, and when he plays well, he plays really well. But other than that, this team is just doing awful. And it seems like they're almost in every game that they play. Like, they play these teams really close, but they always find a way to lose at the end. Their fourth quarter, like 5 minutes and below, is just the worst NFL gameplay in the entire organization.
Well, Trevor Lawrence has just been awful. I mean, he's been absolutely terrible. One of the biggest busts of our life. I think maybe you can't. It's too far to go on a bust, but when he was talked about as like a Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, a generational prospect, I mean, it's been a disaster. It's been an absolute disaster. Last up, Cincinnati Bengals. We talked about them a little when we touched on the Eagles. I'm going to give the Bengals a D because this was a team that should compete in the playoffs. This is a team that should compete to win the AFC North, to win the Super Bowl. They're 3-5. I mean, they are 3-5. They're out of it. They're not going to make the playoffs. Joe Burrow has played good, but you have no run game. The defense is genuinely awful. And you know Lou Anarumo is a great defensive coordinator, but they just have personnel issues. And I've listened to people talk about it. The Bengals are notoriously cheap. They're not bringing in a lot of talented free agents. They're not going and making trades. They won't even pay Jamar Chase. I don't know. Maybe they should move on from Zach Taylor. I used to think they should. Then I was like, I don't know. I still think their offensive scheme is kind of boring and bland. We've been talking about that for 3 years. They've got issues. The bottom line is, whether it's the coach's fault or not, you can't go 3-5 with Joe Burrow as your quarterback. You cannot. And unless the Bengals want to make drastic changes, I don't know how they fix it going forward. It's a complete disappointment, and you got to go D because this is a team that, in my opinion, was a Super Bowl contender, and they're not.